Okay, well, it's bang on 2 o'clock. So in keeping with the packed agenda that we have, I am going to make a start at 2 o'clock. And in keeping with tradition, I do have a few slides that I would rather look at than look at me, even if I have put a tie on. So what I need to say to you is that we are recording the meeting, and we have a packed agenda. So I am asking speakers to keep inside 10 minutes in the first half of the meeting. We'll try and gather a bit of time for questions at the end, but I am going to be remarkably abrupt, considering my nature, and make sure that we don't exceed our time. So if that's okay with everybody, I'm delighted to be able to hand over to Prof. Bakari just to take us through where we're going this afternoon. This is the agenda before us. Ali, do you want to take it from here, or do you want me to talk to the timetable?
Can you talk to the timetable?
Well, oops. You can see we've packed everything in we possibly could. George will probably be a recording, and this afternoon, after the break, we've got a review of the Simulation for Mental Health project, the technician apprenticeships, and then we're going to ask people to contribute on the work that they've been doing. And we have a packed session pre-break. Okay, so over to you, Ali.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Andy. And those of you who are new or have not been around for one of the meetings for a bit, I'm Ali Bukhari. I'm a pediatrician at Dant Valley Hospital. I'm also an associate dean at Health Education KSS, and I have a lead responsibility for simulation and human factors-based education. Without meaning to teach you anything that you already know very well, just a quick update from me before I hand over formally to Andy to give you a more detailed one. Our project has been now up and running for over 2 years, and during this time, as you all know, we've gone through some wonderful surges of our favorite virus, which has caused all kind of problems in terms of continuing an educational endeavor that was meant to be collaborative and working together when people can't come together. And so there is always a tension amongst them. But I am pleased to say that we have made quite a lot of progress, and Andy will touch upon those. But I think it's absolutely fair to say simulation-based education isn't new. It was already well established in our network, and I'm proud of the colleagues who are on the call and those who haven't been able to make it, because they have worked their hardest to make sure the simulation remains at the center of delivering high quality patient care and high quality education. And that has been our mantra always. What the simulation project has done is to try and pull together some of those strands and to provide hopefully some sort of a better foundation for collaboration. And of course, we'll talk in a minute about things like IRIS, our own Simnet, that this is now a much more formal process than it used to be, but also the things like our inaugural conference, which I highly recommend to you, please, to look at. Is due, I think, on the 23rd of May. I have to look at the date myself. 23rd of May, and is considered to be, from what I have seen so far, the work that Andy has done on it, meant to be one of the best conferences that are going out there, really, and much more relevant to our region than perhaps an international events or national events, because the flavor is very much
the wind's blowing the internet out. I'm sure Ali won't mind, as we don't know how long he's going to be offline for, if I move things along. So this is a very quick overview of our project, where we are at the moment. Simnet, we have the next meeting will be the conference meeting in late May. So we are looking for somebody to host the next Simnet, which would be early autumn, really. So September 22, we're looking for a host. At the moment, the meetings are working well as virtual meetings, so it may well be appropriate to have a virtual host. But if you're interested in hosting the next meeting, do let us know. We are still able to offer a few remaining IRIS licenses. The licenses are transferable and permanent. The annual hosting is about £50 a year, and currently it's funded by us until March 23, I think, but these are going rapidly now. Simulation for Mental Health, I'm delighted that Lauren is here, one of our 2 Simulation for Mental Health fellows, is going to update us on the 3 excellent days that they ran and future plans. Conference, sorry, 23rd of May. Got great keynotes. We're waiting for your applications to run presentations, deliver workshops, or provide posters. VR and the like, we have sessions from George and Prof. Danda that we're expecting later on in the meeting. We are advertising now for a senior specialist simulation technician. This is available as a secondment opportunity because, like the project, it's fixed term to the end of August 23, and it would be a great development opportunity for somebody interested in the technical support of high-tech simulation. They'd be working with subject matter experts intent on especially providing the specialist training gap updates in capability and competence that are badly needed as a result of the pandemic primarily, but also thinking about the backlog from the pandemic. And we will, as soon as we can get through the HR process, be looking to recruit a senior fellow part-time, one for, let's say, each county, roughly speaking. And that is something that I'm working hard to get done now. So I think that's pretty well an overview of the work that is going on. We'll go back to the timetable in a moment. Sarah, our admin, runs the email address there very well. You'll find us at this website and on LinkedIn, and we tweet more often than we should. Right, so I hope that's all been clear so far. And so what we should be able to do now is just go back to the timetable and ask for Jane to take us through an overview of her activity as our virtual host for this meeting. And I'll stop.
I'm very much a virtual host. I did explain to Andy I don't actually have a sim suite to actually show anyone. So yeah, I thought that could be interesting in itself. But no, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. So and hello to some others from the primary care sim team. I can see you there. So hi, Anna. Right, I'm hoping that I can share a few slides.
Yeah, we see the slide.
Perfect. Okay. So this is me. So I'm a GP. I have a few different roles, like a lot of people do these days, but for the last few years, as part of that, I have been developing a simulation team for primary care, by primary care for primary care, basically initially just in West Kent, and then last September I was appointed as the first HEE KSS GP fellow in simulation. So as part of that, I have two sort of slightly mutually dependent fellowship goals. So there's developing simulation for all primary care staff across Kent, Surrey and Sussex, and that is all primary care staff, so that's clinicians, non-clinicians, and kind of everything in between. And also to develop a primary care faculty in Kent, Surrey and Sussex, so that we can obviously deliver that. So, as I'm sure you're aware, Kent, Surrey and Sussex is pretty vast. So there's a few sort of logistical things there. So there's 17 GP training schemes, and in Kent alone there are 42 primary care networks and 150 GP practices. So kind of got our work cut out for us, but we're very keen and we're very enthusiastic. Faculty training is going well. So we're initially we were just a very sort of bijou sort of group of 4 of us, and we've got ourselves up to 16. We're following the Teach Sim KSS sort of training program. So people do a level 1 as the e-learning for health, and they do a level 2 with myself and Reshma and Caroline have now been trained up by the team at MTW to deliver that. And then they come up and do some observed debriefing, and then we always sort of pair debrief as you know everyone does sort of within simulation. We have got a lot of GPs on board, but really pleased that actually we are becoming interprofessional as well. So we've got 2 practice nurses, a clinical pharmacist, and also an ANP, who are all an absolute sort of integral part of the faculty. So that's really good and quite exciting. In terms of sessions, over the last 12 months, we've delivered 24 sessions out across mainly West Kent, but also East and North Kent. Majority in situ, so sort of 80% of the work that we do is out in situ, and that really kind of I think makes sense for us in primary care. So this is kind of what we do. We get out onto waiting room floors a lot with our mannequins and get people to get their emergency equipment out and see how they work as a team, debrief as a team, and kind of manage from there. I'm very conscious that the next people are going to be the HoloLens people and also the virtual reality people from Brighton Medical School. This is what we use in primary care. So this is Resusciani. So lots of advantages actually in that she's very transportable. So she does kind of meet our aims well. And I also have a little, you can't really see her here very well, but she's a little kind of sim baby, but she doesn't do anything apart from be kind of essentially a doll. And then I have a little Bluetooth speaker which I put under her baby grow, and I can get her to kind of cry and have stridor. But again, it kind of comes down to kind of some of the fundamentals of simulation. It's just what we found is so long as we're really sort of on track with our pre-brief and making all of that kind of simulation realism contract part of it, that actually, and we acknowledge all that sort of the disadvantages of some of the mannequins that we have, that people do very much kind of buy into our simulations, and the feedback that we've had has actually been really phenomenal. So it's really sort of taken off. Attendees, as said, we're looking at this being primary care staff, so a full spectrum, and that has been reflected in who attends. So we've managed to get sort of 17 different roles coming along to our sessions so far. We've got lots of big plans, so a lot of it is around developing our faculty, because clearly one of the kind of big things that's going to stop us enabling expanding is actually not having enough faculty to deliver. We've got lots of plans about sort of different scenarios, to do some work with around sort of more paediatric emergencies and focusing on that, because I think paediatrics scares a lot of us, but it scares us out in general practice quite a lot. And also working with the Macmillan primary care team on some cancer care emergencies for primary care, looking at a pilot, looking at sort of managing aggression and challenging behaviours, because unfortunately, like a lot of people within the NHS, that's been a real expanding thing that we've seen. And also looking at working with all of yourselves out, because we also 20% is about our simulation suite. So got a really good relationship with the team at Tunbridge Wells Hospital, who've been incredibly supportive for years. But tomorrow we're coming out to the Digital Innovation Centre, and I saw you on the call there, Robert. So again, developing a really good relationship with them, very grateful to them. And next month we've got our first 2 Sussex simulation sessions, so at the Princess Royal and also at the Royal Alexandra as well. So I thought I'd just leave you with a couple of the quotes that we've had from our very most recent simulation. And really just kind of simulation is for primary care is here to stay. We're going to be expanding, really keen to meet you, develop relationships with all of you out there, very keen to look at you know, how we can kind of work together, not just on delivering primary care simulation, but in the future really like to look at, say, some sort of primary care, secondary care interfaces, some of those professional relationships that we have, and that whole kind of patient journey would be really good. So thank you.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you for such a lightning tour of a huge amount of work. Actually, if I had one wish, it would be to eradicate the term role play from all future discussions. But there you go, it's not going to happen. Because you've galloped through, we've got a couple of minutes on the timetable. If there are any immediate comments or questions for anybody for Jane.
Sorry, Andy, I was trying to be really tight on time. You were.
No, it was great. Ali Bukhari has a hand up.
Since my network is now working again, I may as well ask you a question. I think you started saying, Jane, that you have started making contacts in Surrey and Sussex as well. So what you're doing in Kent sounds great, but this being a KSS fellowship, how do you think that is going to progress? What can we do to help you? What colleagues can on this call do to help you to make those links?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, I mean, so I've got my funding for my fellowship obviously is KSS, but the funding to run the sessions has to come through the training hub. So, I've kind of negotiated with Sussex Training Hub, and they're kind of on track, which is why we've then managed to get 2 pilot sessions in for next month. I'm speaking to the Training Hub sort of Surrey board on Wednesday, and after that I'll kind of be making some sort of contacts, hopefully with Surrey Sims. But basically, if there's anyone here who is working in a sim suite in Surrey or Sussex, or to be honest, even actually the rest of Kent, actually, because you know it works better, isn't it, the closer to home that it is, and so I'm very keen to kind of hear from everybody and anybody, please. We've pretty much got, we've got our scenarios. We kind of know how to run it with you, but we're really keen to kind of work with you. And it seems to sort of, we need to almost have the sim suites days for people to kind of get to know what it is, and then after that it kind of sort of extrapolates and explodes a little bit, and actually then people kind of come and say, come to our practices, come to our PCN. So yes, please, that would be fantastic. Thanks,
Jane, Ali. And there is a note from Eileen Dudley in the chat regarding OBS and midwifery. I think, Eileen, it's fair to say that there's a lot of scope for development in OBS and midwifery simulation in the future. Maybe that's...
Andy, I just wanted to mention it because we had a serious incident a few months ago, and it was the communication difference, decision-making difference between the GP and the midwife in terms of the correct pathway for a woman in threatened preterm labour, and an associated poor outcome because of that. So I was interested in your list of potential stakeholders and who you might be working with, and just wanting to shout out for obstetrics and midwifery included in those.
I think that's a really good point, and we'll maybe continue that conversation. Jane and Eileen both nodding at the moment, so we'll think about that. Jane, we might find a moment or two tomorrow, who knows? Okay, right. Next on my agenda is the little interview I recorded with George Arilis, who is the consultant orthopedic surgeon who is currently piloting the HEE SDG project HoloLens, and he's busy clinically at the moment. So we recorded a brief interview, which, although it absolutely terrifies me to see myself on the screen like this, I'll grit my teeth and share with you now, just for George's update on what he's doing. So how are things going up to now? Can you hear that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good.
What on earth? First of all, could I ask you just to bring us up to date? So how are things going up to now?
So there have been quite a lot of development, from starting to having the HoloLens and not knowing what to do with it, up to now that I have managed to get a lot of things running, and there's quite a lot of meetings and networking that happens. So there is a lot more interest than what I basically understand. There's a lot more things on the program I've been studying.
I think George has actually managed to be here. So maybe, George, it would be better, because this is not working well. And I can't get any better system audio. George, are you there? Would you like to speak to us?
I can speak if you can hear me. I'm on my way from one hospital to the other. Can you hear me?
It's all right, George. That's no better than my video. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, sorry, George, I'm going to summarize where we are, in that you're continuing to work with an international group of interested people, really, and locally the work with HoloLens is coming on quite dramatically. And I think basically we might leave it at that for now, simply because everything isn't working for me.
Yes, the video doesn't seem to sound very well.
So Ali Bukhari asks some background to the project. So the background is that nationally, Health Education England have a massive project to roll out equipment for virtual reality, augmented reality. So that's VR headsets from HTC, Microsoft HoloLens, and a River VR classroom in a box, which is a set of 20 odd headsets and associated software and laptop. And at the moment, the first step of the actual practicalities of this project is to loan out HoloLens, of which we have one with George, and George has been doing some quite innovative work with the HoloLens, making use of applications which are available free. And the next step of the HEE project, I believe, is fairly imminent. It's going to be the rolling out of the VR headsets, and maybe Ian, who's on our agenda later on, will say a bit more about this. And in view of my technical issues and the fact that I see Prof. Danda is here.
Hello.
I'm going to move the meeting on, and Prof. Danda, if you'd care to update us on your work, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Afternoon, everybody. I'm kind of in the middle of surgery, but I think I've got a quiet spot for 10 minutes. Thank you for the invitation to present. I've got a small presentation for you, if I can zip through that. I'll just take the screen. So I'm going to give you a summary of what I've been doing at Brighton with the various grants and support given to me via HEE. We'll talk about the VRIMS and the app development, the global project and our global course in the last week of April, progress to date, the beta version of the basic life support app that I now have and developed with my group, an ATLS project, and how we're going to scientifically validate the utility of virtual reality and augmented reality in MedEd, the augmented reality skin cancer app, and the future projects, and my ambition to completely change mandatory training with the utilisation of extended reality and metaverse, and of course the medical undergraduate clinical examination project I've got running as well. So I attended the Future of Surgery meeting, and again, thanks to HEE for a stall. It was very busy, lots of interest. But what I realised, two things. One, there's an abundance of young entrepreneurial surgeons who are just going out there and you know, they're passionate about tech and application in med. But the second thing that I realised was that there's a lot of scientific lack of scientific rationale and validity to this technology at the moment. And what I'm going to be doing is setting up a research group at Brighton to understand this tech and validate it. So VRIMS is a free for training resource that I set up before I got involved with virtual reality medicine surgery. And essentially, we in the first course, we had these 100 headsets sponsored going out to trainees. This was 2 years ago when the pandemic first happened. But actually, what I got is a very scalable way. So we're not talking about hundreds of pounds of a headset. We're talking about a £10 headset. This is the much more comfortable £20 headset, but your mobile phone is the VR headset. And when you adopt this approach, what you have is scalable. But what you also have is a way of delivering training that is beyond the boundaries of geography. All you need is a 4G network and a headset. And one of the early ambitions of VRIMS was to be able to deliver remote training to all parts of the world, and that's exactly what we're doing. So what's different with my approach is that I don't just use a single 360 camera. I in-camera stream additional perspectives, because you don't need a 360 camera to demonstrate a medical procedure or a surgical procedure. So if you imagine this is the setup, 360 camera gives you the perspective of the student or the trainee, and they can see the 360 space. But what if you put a camera in the overhead light and overlay that above the cadaver? So you just simply lift your head up and you've got that additional camera stream. What about a second camera that allows you to zoom right in? 360 cameras don't zoom in, and certainly some of my surgery is very fine anatomy. So now you put that additional overlay to the left and the student turns their head to the left, and they've got the zoom camera within that 360 space. What we did in the most recent global medicine course is I actually then overlaid a Zoom meeting into another stream and had an expert panel review discussing how they adapted their surgical techniques to another perspective. So what you get here is a flat screen version of what we do with multiple camera streams, using that redundant space in a more educational benefit way. And VRIMS now has collected more than 400 in-camera streams of cadaveric procedures from 10 surgical specialties. We've got free flap, we've got aesthetic surgery, microsurgery. I've got ENT setting up instruments in one of those camera streams with an endoscope. We have hand surgery, facial palsy, lots of orthopedic surgery, and emergency medicine, neurosurgery, urology. It grows and grows. But what I do every time I run a course is that I have a week, and we've got a course at the end of April. I run the live surgery stream in 360, but I restream all the previous content. So when you're a trainee, you can simply either watch the live stream, but if your interest on that day of hand surgery isn't hand surgery, you can watch the entire back catalogue at your own leisure. And there has to be a switch on and a switch off from a HTA regs point of view, because if it's a free for all, because it's cadaveric, it becomes public display, and that's much more difficult to manage. So the initial kind of iteration was to have an app, and I had to develop some my vision of an app in Prezi, and this is kind of just a bit of an outline of what that app would look like. So again, thanks to HEE, but I will be developing a dedicated app to bring all of this extended reality content together. So you imagine in this app, This is clunky. This is used Prezi. This was pre-budget, but we will have a much more sophisticated way of putting all this content together. So let's show you an example of that. So that's your introduction lectures on how to convert your mobile phone into a headset. But let's say, for example, I'm an OMFS surgeon. I have an interest in head and neck, and I want to learn about perforator flaps. So I've got a link to a 40-minute webinar on perforator flaps, and I watch that webinar as my introduction to the background of those surgical procedures and principles. So I've watched my webinar as an introduction. Now I want to see some 360 content. So we go back to the section on perforator flaps. And then knowing that I can use my mobile phone as the headset, and this is why it's scalable. We can then simply click on the link for clinical examination in 360 of how to mark up a lower limb perforator flap. And you can see this was a bit clunky because it needed YouTube links. The app will miss YouTube entirely, actually, we'll avoid YouTube. So now I've got a 360 video of how to mark up lower limbs. I know how to convert my mobile phone into a VR headset. I've got my £20 headset, and I can watch Paul Norris marking up a lower limb free flaps. I've seen the clinical examination. Now I want to see the surgery. So I go back into the section in the app, and now I can watch the cadaveric procedure with the camera in camera stream to get the close-up perspective, the expert panel review, the discussion in some of the global medicine videos, and this is me demonstrating cadaveric procedure with the in-camera stream. So you'll see that in a minute. And the as I've said, the library grows with 400 videos now in the last count. There's a course planned in the last week of April, but we've got something special planned for the April course. So here's your camera, there's your cadaveric procedure. And you can see the different perspectives with the camera from above going right in. And you're a mini film producer, you just turn your head to the perspective you want with the various camera angles. So that's the ambitions of the app, and we'll begin that development soon. But I've now moved that beyond just virtual reality into augmented reality, and that April course will also host the metaverse in medicine and surgery. So we're going to host the whole conference in the metaverse, and this is where it's always been the ambition for me, is to share the very precious experience we have in the UK with the rest of the world. So what we're going to be doing, this is from the last proof of concept abstract for the Association of Surgeons in Uganda, and we had 43 countries participate in that pilot. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be inviting 10 surgeons to come from low to middle income countries every year, starting with Uganda. I'm going to pay for 10 surgeons to come to the UK and have hands-on cadaveric training in the WHO global burden of disease surgical procedures. We're going to live stream it in 360. I'm sending one of my fellows out to Uganda with 50 headsets, and we're going to let them participate, rural surgeons, in that experience, and we're going to try to measure what impact that has before I roll it out to subsequent LMICs around the world. So that's the first project, but of course we've now gone into much more sophisticated true VR. The difference between what I've done today is I've just have a camera with a lens at the front and a camera behind. That's called 360 video. Now we have a basic life support app and with ATLS app in development and mandatory training basic surgical skills as well. So this is the BLS course.
When we're doing chest compression, we need to do it hard and we need to do it fast.
And again,
we need to do about 120 chest compressions a minute. So hands in the middle of the chest. Interlock your fingers with your heel of the hand on the chest.
So I'm taking that content out to some local schools in Kent, Surrey, Sussex, and I'm going to try to prove that that at least this is an alternative way of giving basic life support training to teachers. As part of that project, starting with my youngest child's local school in Hurstbeer Point. But the difference between the 360 video and true VR is that we have now an opportunity for haptics. And I've intentionally selected a very basic maneuver, basic life support, where we can assess where the hand is positioned, what the rate of compression is and the depth of compression. All of this technology needs scientific validation. So this is the beta version of the basic life support app that HEE has funded and that I have developed with my group. Now we can start with a slightly more sophisticated headset It's still an Oculus, only 200, 300 pounds, nowhere near the cost of HoloLens, which I think are several thousands of pounds. You can start to select, you can start to look at competencies, selection of the right the airway. How about the chin lift, jaw thrust? Are those maneuvers done efficiently, and are they equivalent to the current methods of delivering this form of training? What about the hand position, the rate of compression, the depth of compression, and the hand position? Now we can use VR for competencies, not only just videos, because we can sign off those competencies remotely. So there go the hands. So what I'm going to be doing in this project is comparing the current standard to a totally VR created world, both with sensors in the headsets, eye tracking, physiological sensors to see how trainees adapt, but also a full body suit called mocap, where we will look at how the body moves differently in a true VR experience compared to a real world experience. And that will give us the scientific validation that we need to be able to roll this out as an alternative to the methods of training at the moment. So you'll see that mocap in action as Karanvir, my PhD student, is just demonstrating it as a collaboration with Diverse Interactive. Mandatory training in Tesla suit. Imagine putting on a suit where you can feel the heat of a fire scenario, not a real fire, but a fire scenario where I'm going to revolutionize mandatory training with fire training, for example, with the potential of Tesla suits can create that world for you, and how you can manage a fire simulation and scenario as part of your mandatory training. Now, in that first week in January, we ran this course as a collaboration with Upsurgeon, and we started to play with some augmented reality, and that was, again, very successful. I'll be running this as a yearly course, and I needed to understand augmented reality, how to develop it, and potential utilization in med-ed. So the most recent grant will fund AR training content in mandatory training, medical students, and also basic surgical skills. So we're starting with some, again, very generic skills. I'm going to start with a skin cancer app that will not only help to diagnose skin cancer, give you an indication of margins, but will overlay critical structures on the face, as well as give an indication of the facial subunits and the various algorithms that I use and how I manage cancers with the geometric approaches in the local flaps. So you'll see this is just an example of the stuff that I've been playing with, and we're going to proceed with this as a project grant. So an overlay of the facial subunits of the face using augmented reality, but again, very strategically selecting a condition that's ubiquitous, skin cancer, and a surgical skill that's basic, that crosses multiple surgical specialties. So that's where we are with that project, and I'll take some questions.
Wow, I think everybody's panting at the moment. So thanks very much for that. And yeah, it's been quite a sort of breathless launch into this Simnet meeting, and I think I'm largely responsible for that. So apologies to everybody. Thank you very much, Prof. Danda, for that talk. And I think we will take a few minutes for questions. And Ali Bukhari, I'll go to you first.
Thank you very much, Professor Danda. Very good to see and hear what you've been up to. You mentioned that you're going to have the opportunity of pulling all these strands together in one place. Yeah. Is that going to be an app development, or is that going to be a website, or how is that going to be accessed, and how easily it's available to, or how soon it's going to be available to us?
It'll be an app development. I suspect it would take me probably 6 months to develop it. Now, there's two strategies. Either I will get an independent commercial developer and then we pay for the license, or we develop the app ourselves. I need to understand what the costs are, what the potential. It's going to bring everything together into one place is the plan. So I need to understand its range and depth, as well as the cost implications, and whether it's something that we invest in as part of HEE, or whether we just get a license for that content and then we add and build content to it. Yeah, hi Sheik, your hand's up.
Yes, thank you for that. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
What I really liked actually was a bit where you haven't gone for a 360 view where actually it wouldn't really add anything, because that's probably where we're just at that bit now where we're thinking, well, we've got the technology, let's do some films.
Yeah.
And so we've got someone putting a chest drain with a 360 view. That's completely pointless. But that what you've got, that is brilliant, because what you're saying is you look in a direction and you can go right close up on the stage sutures or what have you. Did you need different software to do that, or was that just because we're at a very early stage?
Yeah, you do need a kind of multiple cameras and additional software and licenses for access to that software. I have actually filmed a 360 in-camera chest drain on both a cadaver and a model, because that will form the brief for the ATLS True VR app that I'm developing. And in that True ATLS app, it will include front of neck access. Now, are you Ashika, an anaesthetist or a medic?
An EP consultant.
Okay, so I've got we are filming all of the core competencies with camera in camera stream for the anaesthetic curriculum, and we have already a front of neck access with a bougie True VR app developed. I will go to the Royal College of Anaesthetists and I'll come back to HEE to develop the entire library in true virtual reality. But I need to understand the science, I need to validate it, and then I need to go to everybody and say, I've got a BLS and I've got to ATLS and say, I've got the evidence that this is at least equivalent to, if not better than, your current way you're delivering that training, but what you've got is scalability and you've got to reach that as much further. What we need to understand at HEE is that we can't adopt this idea of just sending out headsets or paying for headsets in lots of remote areas. We need to develop a centralized resource where these headsets within a year will be collecting dust, because the apps need updating and the headsets have got a new version now. So we need to form a commercial relationship with the headset developers. We need to have a centralized resource library that can loan these out, bring them back to base, update them, maintain them, but also then when the new sets come in, we can then replace them for the new headsets. Because what tends to happen when you make a capital investment, you'll buy 10 headsets, it'll sit in a medical education department, within a year it's redundant and the apps don't work, or there's a tech problem and nobody can manage that. So I think that's probably the vision that I have of how HEE can have a centralized resource with both an app but also a headset library where we can upload content and then send it out to all of these institutes on a loan basis.
Yeah, I might just to follow up. I mean, I think that's really awesome. So for RChem, the College of Emergency Medicine, they've got all these what the so-called pinnacle skills. Yeah. So these are things like thoracotomy, where you ain't really going to get a practice on that. You know, when you have to do it, you have to do it. But or you've done it on, you know, cadaveric course, which is quite expensive and difficult to get on. And the reality is, if someone in my department needs one, it's going to be 2 o'clock in the morning when a reg is going to bottle it. Let's be frank. So whereas actually, having gone through the VR on it, so fantastic.
I've got a HEMS video of thoracotomy. Mark Edwards did a thoracotomy at my last course. That is a library that I just simply switch on. You just email me and say, can I have access to your content? And the library's there for you to have the entire back catalogue of videos. But with the idea of having this content but validated, I think that's where the real mileage is. And Rob Bentley, as the national lead for trauma, has approached me with a potential collaboration again to develop resource and training content from a trauma perspective that can be rolled out nationwide.
Brilliant, thank you. Really interesting, thank you.
Jane, question.
Yeah, I suppose I'm coming very back to basics. It was the basic life support and your work with the schools, and I just wondered, had you thought, or were you going to look at doing that also with primary care, GP practices? It would be kind of nice to have be part of that.
The content is there and the library's there, and what's very attractive is it's a £20 headset that the schools will invest in, and then that platform can be on all the time for them if they want it, because it doesn't feature cadavers. So I'm going to start with a pilot in the local schools, and if I can show that there is a benefit, the problem is it will be just qualitative data rather than quantitative, but I will get that mixed method analysis with my more sophisticated apps for basic life support. And that again, we have a centralized library with 100 £300 headsets with the BLS app on there. It could essentially replace face-to-face teaching with a dummy.
Yeah, thanks. No, it'd be nice to kind of get in on some of those, because currently we have no kind of access to sort of anything apart from our Sassiani's.
Just drop me a line, Jane. I'll be happy to share the content with you, and you can have you can pilot it out in primary care if you want to do that. I'm more than happy. Ali, back to you.
Just a comment, really. I mean, clearly there's a significant gap in simulation-based education where you have stepped in, and of course STG is also trying to step into a similar kind of role where learner learns the theory and then has to practice, and there's nothing in the middle. And you and others have spotted the fact that actually there's a gap that can be filled in by virtual reality, whatever technology we use, but before hands-on. But it still doesn't obviate the need of a BLS being taught when actually you have a patient or something to do with your hands, because watching is all very well, but your hand skills are learned by doing hand things.
Well,
so
that's the point.
So it's a gap rather than a replacement. That's what I'm saying.
Well, no, True VR, you'll be surprised. With True VR, you will have hand controllers. And so with True VR, you are moving your hands in an equivalent position and an equivalent motion. And that is why I need to validate it with the mocap suit, because if I can show that in that True VR basic life support that the maneuvers and the body position is exactly equivalent, because if you have a look in the True VR, there's a depth of compression indicator to tell you whether you're compressing the chest equivalent. Now, when you have a mocap and I have a physical dummy and I have an physical instructor, and we look at the way the body moves in that scenario, compare it to the True VR app that I've developed and show it's equivalent, then what you've got is you're going to fill that gap. Brilliant. I think that's it. That's all. Oh, Andy's got his hand up. Hi, Andy. Sorry, I didn't spot you.
No. I think that Alex Saunders has just put a comment in the chat, by the way, about whether this will completely replace face-to-face training. I think there is going to be a difficulty. So if you take the point of view of a lay person deciding to start CPR, I think is one of the difficult questions. I would need to see the didactic package that you've got, whatever its platform, format, whether it's face-to-face or not, having in it as a learning outcome in it, that teaching content that gives people the confidence and the capability to want to start to do CPR. So the word that I'm latching onto in all this tech, the word that I've latched onto more than anything else in what you've been saying is around governance. It's around educational governance and validation.
Yeah.
I think it's easy for each of us to spot what might be a potential hiatus or gap in what actually could come out of this, regardless of platform. And I think that the interesting part is going to be the due rigor and robust assessment.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I think just following on from that, so we're using, like I said, a mixed method analysis, both in terms of the qualitative and the quantitative data we will get from the eye tracking, the physiological sensors in the headset, as well as the sensors and the body movement in the mocap. That will then show us how trainees adapt to that stressful environment. And then when you start to pose questions and have an interaction in our new metaverse, then you can actually see how you can create this completely virtual environment with concept, with haptics, but also is the adaptation to that simulation equivalent to the real world scenario, or isn't it? Because if it isn't, then we know that we need to supplement it. But let's use scientific rigor, educational theories of learning, and validate it and its utility, and then work from that point onwards, I think.
I couldn't agree more, and there's a lot there about connectivism as well as the more traditional learning and instructional theories. I'm just going to give Alex a chance to comment. He has a hand up.
Hi, thanks, Andy. Jag, really impressive stuff. Thanks very much for sharing. That's awesome, and I think anybody who knows me on the call will agree that I'm a bit of a tech head, and I can see Ian O'Neill smiling there. this is absolutely amazing. Doing the XR, AR, MR, VR, whatever we want to call it today, is some good stuff. My role as head of resus and simulation at Brighton is just coming to an end, where I start my new role next week. But obviously, you've talked a lot about BLS within the VR space. And one of the things that occurs to me is that validation absolutely needs to be robust enough to replace anything from a face-to-face point of view, and that's really critical. I'd look forward to seeing where you move forward with that, certainly. But one of the things that does kind of spring to mind is the challenge that you'll face with actually people getting involved in the pressure that they receive when delivering chest compressions. Getting the right rate, rhythm and depth, absolutely, you know, VR's all over that. And actually, if you look at the Zoll equipment with the pucks, you know, you get that feedback into the actual defibrillators. The key for me is the mannequins also give you that that feel of pushback, if that makes sense, and that's actually quite important for delivering that BLS, and that's why it's changed over the years with the mannequins changing on guidelines. So that's the one element I think, you know, we might have a challenge with on that one.
Yeah, I agree, Alex. I mean, I think that's why from the early kind of consideration of the design study, it was just physiological sensors and also eye tracking. But I've been pushing the mocap because I need to see how the body moves differently in those two scenarios. And if you look at and again, I'm happy to share the beta version of the basic life support, you do have to have your arms stretched out in front of you, and you do have to lean over the mannequin. We've intentionally designed it that way so that your body posture does influence the way in which you will compress the chest.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm going to draw this bit to a close because we could get a little bit down a rabbit hole of BLS, and anybody who's done the American life support training will know that it doesn't necessarily teach confidence. But anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much all. I'm pleased to ask Ian if you'd want to step up to the mic, Ian, and we'll ask you to explain to us about HEE and its relationship with our region.
Thanks very much, Andy. It's quite useful actually to follow on from that presentation, because there is a little bit of overlap there. Oh, I'm just being asked to validate my identity by my laptop, so I can't launch my presentation. Quickly, I need to do two-step authentication, sorry. Otherwise, I can't share my presentation on the screen. Very timely. Okay.
No worries. They never ask you to do that when you're bored, do they? These bits of kit.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, we have your slide.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of the TEL activity that's happening in the national team, and particularly where it overlaps with simulation, obviously, and touch on some of the things just mentioned there relating to XR or immersive technology. So there are the 4 work streams that the national team are involved with, and that I can connect you to. There's the platform work stream, which includes eLearning for Health, Healthcare Hub, the Learning Hub, and we also have a few other platforms that we run both regionally and nationally to support different kinds of technology enhanced learning. There's the simulation and immersive technology work stream, which I'll be talking about most today. There's the projects team, which is actually kind of distributed amongst the other 3 work streams mainly, and the supporting TEL work stream, which is where I sit. And my job really is to connect the regional activity and regional stakeholders to the national team and feedback, and make sure that the national team, the products that they're developing and services that they provide are hitting the right people in the different regions. I thought I'd just kick off with a quick update on the National Faculty Development Programme, which aims to support the professionalization of simulation technicians. These are the 6 topics. I know some people here in the call probably are involved in helping develop the content, but I just thought I'd give you a quick overview of the basics of this program. So the idea is that it's going to be expert-led, should scale, and is multi-professional. The 6 core topics should be made up of 4 or fewer 20-minute e-learning sessions. And we're at the stage now where I think one of these is almost due for delivery. I think it's topic 2. But I think we're going to wait for all of the components to be ready before we launch the program. The program is currently planned to be an e-learning only, but there is options to have online facilitated workshops if needed to support them. And once this main program is complete, the idea is to have some more specialist topics added onto it, including one on deploying XR or immersive technology in the classroom or in an educational simulation context. Here's a little a couple of screenshots of the prototype module. It should work on desktops and mobile, and it's got a mobile first design philosophy, so that it actually reflows quite nicely on smaller devices, so that people can do their learning on the bus or train. The thing I really wanted to just go over with you today is the Portfolio and XR Hubs work stream. There are 3 main parts to this, and the part that I thought I'd start with is the portfolio, which is something like a collection of validated educational solutions to help people choose the right products to support simulation and immersive technology or XR purchases. Here's a little, sorry, Paul. Yeah, so there's no reason why there wouldn't be AICC links because it's a national development. So I think that should be possible. Yeah, but I can check and confirm that with you if you want. So the simulation immersive learning technologies portfolio is being piloted at the moment with health education, higher education institutions who are bid awardees. The portfolio essentially is a collection of tried and tested simulation immersive technology solutions with fact sheets, so that you don't have to go to different product suppliers to collect all that information together. And it also offers a way, certainly in this form, to lease, loan, or purchase that hardware, not software, obviously, because there's no tangible with it. And the leasing option and the loan option is supported by, and as is the purchasing, is supported by Insight as a national supplier. So the portfolio as it stands is a kind of virtual brochure with this kind of centralized distribution for different regions. To the direction of travel really for the portfolio is to integrate more supporting TEL information, including things like how easy the solution is to use on the ground to help people who maybe never had a piece of, never had a headset in their hands or never tried to connect it to the Wi-Fi at work, to help them understand what kind of what level of engagement you need from different stakeholders in the trust to make sure that those technology enhanced learning solutions are deployed effectively and don't gather dust in the cupboard. These so-called implementation factors should help. They should be validated after we've done some of the pilots, so that we know that the red, amber, green scorings for different things match, but also they complement the TEL readiness assessment that we're doing with different organizations around the country, so that they know not only what kind of connectivity, for example, the technology needs, they also know what state their organization is, and they've done that pre-work, so they can use those 2 pieces to understand whether the thing that they're buying is going to be useful and used. to complement the portfolio, which is very much a static resource, there's the XR Hubs, which is a library of immersive technology equipment and software applications that is currently in pilot phase. But and the pilot is to help us understand really how the hardware can be used effectively in educational simulation clinical contexts. I'll just quickly run through. So of course, here's the a standard XR immersive technology scale. On the right here is physical reality. Then we have augmented reality when you hold up your phone, scan a QR code, see an object laid over physicality. Mixed reality is the HoloLens. So that product space is really all about making the environment and the virtual object interact together. But really the physical environment is the primary environment that you operate in, whereas augmented virtuality is the opposite. It's mainly virtual, but you bring physical objects into your virtual reality. If you've ever used a Quest 2 headset, someone comes near you when you're in virtual reality, their face will appear in bright red in the virtual space, so that you know that you're going to, for example, hit your dog when you're waving your arms around. And then virtual VR is the virtual reality headset that we've seen. Was the Oculus Quest 2 and the Oculus Quest 1 and some other products too. So that's, you're completely immersed in virtual reality. And we want to use the XR Hubs really to help organizations try before you buy, as well as collect all of this information, case studies and an evidence base to support its usefulness, so that we know that we're recommending the right kind of approach and equipment. And just to go into a bit of detail, the delivery partners and the major software and hardware partners that we're working with can scale to all of the regions in the UK, in England, and the eventual aim is to roll this out across out of the pilot to more participants. Here you can see some of the equipment that's available in the pilot. So each region has could have access to maybe 20 packs of 5 devices. The HoloLens 2 is the first stage, which is in progress at the moment, which I think George mentioned just now is in our region. The HTC Vive Focus 3s are the next phase, and they're due in early March. And then these are kind of standalone VR headsets, a bit like Quest 2s, but without the requirement for Facebook accounts. The virtual reality Pico G2 4Ks are like hard classroom in a box. You launch the content from a laptop. So as an educator, I always think this one is the one I would probably be deploying within a classroom context, because all the solutions there, and you can keep your learners in lockstep. But that was just my teaching style, I think. And then the content creation packs are due. I don't have a confirmed date for that, but those are 360 editing capable laptops with some 360 cameras to really help generate some content, help Truscott generate some local content and see if that's the right approach for them. To support all of this kind of hardware, there's also the supporting TEL function, which I'm part of, and we have these immersive technician roles across the country, and they kind of provide hands-on or on-site support depending on where they're located. We have one in the southeast, and currently they're only working 1 day a week, but we're working to convert that to something more longer term and sustainable. And we work very closely with them. The Immersive Learning Technology Officer for the Southeast is Alan Inglis, who's based at Oxford University or Thames Valley, one of those two. I'm not sure why that's like that. Maybe that's some kind of partnership. And the idea is that the supporting TEL function provides phone support, issue logging, and remote training on the hardware and software. Second line is the Immersing Technology Officers can provide on-site support, issue response, and some training as well on site. And the third line is the suppliers and manufacturers who we've been working with to deploy all of the hardware and software. So that's the model we're adopting to support the rollout of the XR hubs. I mentioned a couple of times that the enabling factors should map to the TEL maturity matrix, and this is our maturity matrix. There are these different levels that help us understand where an organization is in terms of supporting TEL, and it's already been used to support the deployment of the XR hubs pilot projects. So before you can take part in the pilot project, you have to complete a TEL readiness assessment, which tells you where you are on this scale. And if you are interested in taking part in getting a TEL readiness assessment done for your region, you can just let me know, and we can take you through some of those steps. We're at a stage now where I think it would be useful to most organizations to get it done. And I would be the first port of call really for this region and also for London. Out of the TEL maturity matrix, you get a score out of 5, so that you can understand where you are and how this fits in with the kind of technology enhanced learning equipment that you want to deploy. And we can also support in putting a plan in place to work out how to fill some of those gaps and help you get along. All right, so thanks very much for your time. I know that was really fast, so if you want to follow up with any of those things, I am a friendly fellow, so you can just message me or email me, and I can take you through any of those individual parts.
Well, wow, thanks, Ian. That was indeed a thorough skip over a very large amount of work, and it's great that we have you and Rosie here on the meeting today. We are eating into our little bit of comfort break, but I would just like to give us a quick moment to just see if there are any immediate comments or questions that are going to come up. Otherwise, we'll take a brief break and come back for the simulation in mental health in 10 minutes at 1:15. Jane, you have?
Sorry, just to see what we're doing. Without wanting to sound like a bit of a stuck record, I suppose I'm quite keen to know how could primary care get involved with this? Because obviously we're not, we don't have a sim suite, we don't have sim suite, we have to kind of, some centres charge us for accessing them. A lot of them say, the trusts come first. There's all sorts of different sort of aspects that limit our involvement with that, and I can see that kind of potentially being an issue with headsets and things, and kind of as we expand that. But equally, I'm aware that HEE is very keen for primary care to be involved in simulation, hence my role and hence what I'm trying to do. So I suppose it was other ways, or have you got a vision or a thought of how we could move forward to work together? Because I could see some sort of quite interesting ways that maybe we could work to have some of those conversations about the sort of professional conversations or the patient journey and all sorts actually potentially, but only if kind of primary care maybe get in there.
I think definitely that'd be something that Rosie and I would work together in developing a kind of strategic approach for the Southeast. I know that the training hubs are important in deploying education in the area, but I'd have to understand a bit more about what scoping work's already been done. There's no reason why we can't do a TEL readiness assessment for educational spaces that you have, whether they're simulation or not, so that we understand what kind of basic things. There's really like simple things that we can do to, for example, facilitate student placements on sites, no matter where they are, even whether they're acute or in primary care. So I'd be happy to have that discussion with you and see if Rosie and I can work out a plan on getting started on that.
I think something to add here is that we have the opportunity to take a more strategic, dare one say, ICS type view of this, to just pick maternity and obstetrics, primary care, paramedics. One of the questions that I find myself asking in these Simnet meetings is about the people who aren't here as much as the people who are, and I celebrate the fact that primary care is so ably represented now, but there are still people who aren't here, and how we build these systems of care together with people not at the table is very difficult. So I think there is some interesting work to do as we go on. And I am going to call a halt now and ask you to step away from your keyboards and return at past, and we'll begin with Lauren at past for simulation for mental health. Thank you all for our presenters in this first half. Okay, so it's 3:15. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us as we galloped along through the first half of the meeting. In this second half, we have presentations from Lauren Philpott for simulation for mental health, and Aidan Wilson is going to describe the simulation apprenticeship program, and then we're going to give you the opportunity to update us on your work and maybe any questions or needs that you want to highlight to us. So without more ado, it's my pleasure to hand over to Lauren if you want to tell us about Sim for Mental Health.
Thank you. Can you?
Yeah, we see your screen.
Cool. I'm just trying to figure out how to make it. Well, here we go. So Isabel can't be here today because the storm has taken out her power, so she's completely powerless, bless her. So you'll have to listen to just me, I'm afraid. But we wanted to do it kind of like a storyboard rather than a full-on presentation. So our project scope was to develop and deliver some innovative regional program of Sim for Mental Health in 3 practice locations, which we did October, November time last year. So our initial design approach was, so we were doing hybrid approach. So our aim was to get 50-50 virtual and face-to-face. In reality, it was more maybe 70-30, but we still managed to do it, which was really, really good. We decided that our audience was going to be multi-agency and interdisciplinary, because we kind of highlighted that a lot of times when people have mental health crises, they end up being seen by a variety of disciplines. So this includes, so we included in our training police, emergency frontline workers, nurses, doctors, GPs, social workers. We kind of wanted to cover everybody that would have any kind of contact with these service users. In terms of the facility, so we wanted to design it in, or to deliver it rather, in 3 different locations, so that it would be accessible to people from anywhere in Kent, Surrey and Sussex. And then we kind of put together the topics and the learning outcomes that we wanted to cover. So we kind of made some broad learning outcomes and then designed the scenarios on that. So each day that we ran had a different topic. The first was psychosis, the second was depression and suicidal ideation, and the third was personality disorders. And we made broad learning outcomes and then kind of honed in on certain aspects that we wanted to cover. And we also needed to make sure that we maintained psychological safety for the participants, for the faculty, and we also had some really good input from experts with lived experience. So a lot of the design, we had quite extensive meetings with 3 experts with lived experience who gave us some really, really good insight into their stories and what they'd kind of found when working with different disciplines, and the things that they felt was most important. And we very much designed our 3 study days on that. So we made sure that we ensured everybody's psychological safety. We had a lovely psychologist who worked with our experts with lived experience afterwards as well, to kind of make sure that they were okay after the days had been delivered as well. So looking more into delivery now. So we got really good engagement from a variety of disciplines. We kind of made each, so we had 7 disciplines in our minds, and we offered places out to people from Kent, Surrey and Sussex in each of those disciplines, and we got really good engagement from that. So we had police officers, paramedics, psychiatric nurses, physical health nurses, GPs, psychiatrists, social workers, and I'm really sorry if I've left anyone out, but I can't think of anybody else at the moment. In terms of marketing, we contacted the comms teams pretty much everywhere we could think of. We emailed lots of GPs, lots of hospitals, social workers. We kind of emailed everyone that we knew and managed to get the word out, which was really, really good. And we did get really good engagement. For each of our 3 days as well, we had the experts with lived experience there. They attended virtually, and they were able to give us their insight as the study days went along, and that was really, really helpful. Like I said, we did it at 3 different venues. So the first one, the psychosis one, was at the Digital Innovation Centre. That was very, very lovely, hosted by those guys. We were at Canterbury Uni, the Canterbury campus for the second one, and the Medway campus for the third one. And that was really good because it kind of meant that different people could come to different venues that were kind of closer to their localities. We did tech rehearsals before because we kind of highlighted that doing it hybrid was going to involve a lot of tech, and technology always fails us when we need it not to. So we did a lot of tech rehearsal with the venues and the hosts, which was really, really helpful as well. It just kind of gave us an idea of what challenges we were going to have along the way. And then we had briefings for all of the faculty. We had some simulated patients as well who came and worked with us, which was really, really helpful. And they kind of really made it for us as well. They were really, really good. And then when we were delivering it, we made sure that we had psychological safety at the forefront of our minds. So we had a separate room in each area and a virtual room. So if anybody needed to step away and have a chat with anybody, then that was available. Thankfully wasn't needed, but it was available if it was. So thinking about our evaluation, so we sent out a survey before the study day and surveys afterwards, and we've been able to look at people's answers pre and post, and they've been overwhelmingly positive. It's been really, really heartening to see the amount of really, really positive feedback that we've had and the difference that we've made. Some of the main findings have been people praising the interdisciplinary aspect and the multi-agency aspect, because we've really been able to get a lot of insight into everybody's kind of practice and work, and really understand each other's roles, which has been really, really useful. Our experts with lived experience were also highly praised in helping kind of share their story and share their point of view from things, because I think when we work and when we're practicing with these as service users, it can be very hard to see their side of things. So it was absolutely fantastic to have their input, and as well for them, they gave us really good feedback in actually understanding why we work the way we do and how decisions are made, which has been really, really good. Role appreciation was a massive finding as well. Psychological safety as well. Everybody said that they felt safe during this events. Which has been really, really good, and we've seen from comparing the pre and post surveys, we've seen big changes in attitude, reduction of stigma or stigmatizing thoughts, and a massive increase in empathy, which is really, really important to us. That's kind of like our biggest goal. In terms of challenges and limitations, so we found marketing quite challenging just because we were almost starting from scratch. We had some contacts, but not really as many as we would have hoped for. But using social media was really helpful. Contacting the comms teams and just kind of emailing out as many people as we could think of. It was time consuming, but ultimately it did pay off because we had really good engagement. Another challenge that we had was particularly for our first event. So I was facilitating, but I was also simulated patient, and we thought that would be fine, but actually we found when we were doing it that it was really difficult because my role was almost split into two, and then it left Isabel very much virtually trying to do everything from the tech side, which she found quite difficult. So we kind of learned from that one, and then we used just simulated patients for the next ones without using faculty, and that was really helpful to do that. And just one further challenge really was running it as a hybrid session, so it was really, really helpful to have people face to face and people virtually. But what we didn't anticipate was the difficulties that we would have in the debriefs, because the people who were face to face found it much easier to get into a conversation within the room, and people that were virtual almost didn't want to kind of butt in. So it was a little bit difficult to kind of manage that. So these are all kind of challenges that we've taken on board, and when we're looking at future events, we're going to kind of tackle those. And in terms of what's next for us, so we've got 2 more dates currently booked, September and October this year. We're going to kind of run it. We're going to take parts of each study that we did and kind of mash them together, so they won't be set conditions next time. It will be kind of a variety of different mental health conditions. So we're going to take the kind of most helpful scenarios from each and kind of merge them together, and activities as well, because it wasn't just simulation. We also did a lot of activities that really helped to build empathy and reduce stigma and help us understand each other's roles. So that was really, really good. We are also in the process of writing up our results because it was overwhelmingly positive. So we're aiming to write 2 papers, and we're going to aim to publish one in a simulation journal and one in a mental health journal. One of them is going to be about working with experts with lived experience, and the other one is going to be about the simulations themselves and how the impact that they've had on practitioners that were involved. To stop me rabbiting on, we wanted to kind of bring a question to everybody who's watching. So if anybody has done a hybrid approach, we wanted to know what challenges were and how you've managed them. So if anybody has any input, that would be really great. And then we're also open to any questions as well. So if anyone wants to ask anything, feel free.
Thanks, Isabel. While people collect their thoughts, Ian has a hand up. I will just say it was a remarkable experience to see a consultant psychiatrist online talking to a police officer in the room about an event that had taken place that they'd watched on video somewhere else. It was an extraordinary set of events. Thank you very much. Ian, shall I come to you and then to Ali?
Thank you. I just wanted to two points really. Just talk about my personal experience trying to teach hybrid. I did find that there was a requirement to significantly redesign tasks to make sure that turn taking happened in a slightly different way. And one of the things I found helpful for a debrief type activity was having it digital first, so that people were working on so that the conversation was structured around some kind of communal digital tool like Padlet or something like that, just to give different opportunities for different types of responses and conversations rather than just the oral one. I don't know if that's going to work really for your context, but it's just what I found. And then the second thing is that we run a virtual hybrid learning faculty. I just wanted to know if the people, the educators on your project were involved in that. And if not, I'm happy to share with you the onboarding form for that.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I'm not aware that any faculty did attend that, so that would be really great if you could send that over. And yeah, I think you're right about going digital first and then face-to-face second, because I think that was particularly in our first one where it was very much the first time we'd ever tried the hybrid approach, and there were a lot more people online, which was helpful in getting their side of the discussion up. But yeah, definitely, I think going for digital first is a much better way of doing it. So thank you for that.
We did try to do that, didn't we? And again, yeah, it was more of a technological limitation. We didn't have Padlet running alongside. We were trying to do it with whiteboards within the Teams approach, and it all was just too complex a technical control without somebody tasked with that job. But yeah, you're quite. It is a better way of getting that done. Ali?
Yes, thank you very much, Lauren. I'm afraid I've got a few comments and questions. I hope you don't mind. They're not difficult, straightforward ones. First, I think as a comment through you to perhaps aimed at Andy, really. You said you ended up doing the simulated patient or simulated person at the same time as being part of the faculty. But we have trained some colleagues, haven't we? We've had 2 sessions where we have run simulated people's program. And I just wonder, what was the reason we couldn't involve them into it?
So the first one needed 2 simulated patients. So the idea was, so we had one person who did Andy's training, and I also did Andy's training, so I was able to do it as well. And we thought that would work better, but in hindsight, it really wasn't as helpful as we thought it was going to be. So we kind of learned from that. But we did have every simulated patient that we had attended Andy's training, so it was really helpful, really helpful.
Okay, sorry, I'm just going to carry on. Second question. What engagement have you had through the Mental Health Trust? I know you had a consultant psychiatrist online, but overall, what is the level of engagement for Mental Health Trust, and can we facilitate that a bit more to give you some more impetus?
So we did manage to get some mental health nurses to attend that were really good, and we also had the psychologist who was available for faculty, and we had various meetings with, I've forgotten his name, was it Fred? A psychiatrist, I can't remember his name, but we did have various meetings with them during the planning process as well, just to make sure that they were happy with what we were doing, and then one of them was able to attend the second session, which was really helpful.
Okay. And then lastly, are you presenting your findings in the presentation to the annual conference as well? Because it looks like you could do a lot bigger, because you have a lot more material from what I gather.
Yes, yeah. I believe we're going to run a workshop.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so we're working to create that at the moment.
Thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, we've had the obligatory 10 seconds of silence. So thank you, Lauren, for that presentation. The data, the evaluation data, is particularly impressive, I have to say. That was a very worthwhile presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're bang on time to hand over to Aidan Wilson. If you're still here, Aidan.
I am indeed. Thanks, Andy.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Aidan. I work for Hampshire Hospitals apprenticeship department, and I've been asked to come along and talk to you about our new apprenticeship, which is for simulation technicians. And just get my presentation doesn't look as good as all the ones we've just seen, so let me just get out there. Lovely. Right. So I'll start with a little bit of background about us at Hampshire Hospitals. So we're a large teaching trust. We've been an authorised apprenticeship and education provider since 2018, and currently we deliver 7 different programmes, but there's a few more we've got in the pipeline to be delivered as well. Majority of these programmes are clinical, so we do lots of healthcare assistant type apprenticeships, but we also have our non-clinicals. We do business admin, we do team leader, estates management, everything along those lines. The latest string in our bow is going to be this simulation technician apprenticeship, which I'm going to talk to you about now. All right, screen. So a little bit about how the standards and how this has got to where we are today. So in 2018, Trailblazer Group was formed by lots of interested parties from around the country. They decided that it would be good to have a course or a set of standards for an apprenticeship for simulation technicians. So they all got together, discussed the standards, and applied to the Apprenticeship Standards Agency to get these approved. That was in 2019, and at that point, the Institute for Apprenticeships asked that they join forces with a higher education group, because there was already a similar apprenticeship being developed by them for higher education technician. So in 2019, they joined forces with them, and they had to get the standards aligned with both specialities, which put things back a little bit further, obviously, according to their plans. Then in July 2021, the standards were finally approved by IFATE and were officially given the go-ahead that we could start developing our course content. Obviously, the delay between July and February, our go live, was waiting for an approved endpoint assessment organisation. So in February, we got given the green light. We got an endpoint assessment organisation was signed up and contracted. And on the 7th of February at Hampshire Hospitals, we went live with our new apprenticeship. So a bit about the apprenticeship itself. So as I said, there's two specialities. So the core standards, which are they are the same across both specialities. There's 10 standards, and they cover the basic duties such as like health and safety, infection control, stock management, that sort of thing. Then with the apprenticeship, there are two speciality options. So you can either choose higher education technician, or you can choose simulation-based education. With each of those, they come their own set of speciality standards. So once you've chosen your speciality, you then align yourself to those sets of standards. We at Hampshire Hospitals are only going to be looking at the simulation-based education, and obviously that's the ones that you guys are hopefully interested in today. So covering the whole of the apprenticeship, there's a set of knowledge, skills and behaviours that the learners will have to meet to be able to get qualified. So there's the knowledge criteria, there's 21, and it covers the core standards as well as the speciality roles. And then there's 24 practical skills and the behaviour standards that go alongside those. The course itself is a level 3 apprenticeship programme, so it's an entry-level course. So it's aimed at simulation technicians who are either brand new into the role or potentially been in the role for a short period of time. We need to be able to ensure there's going to be enough new learning for them. So if you've been a sim tech for 10, 20 years, probably not much more we can teach you in terms of the level 3 standards. However, if you're slightly newer to the role, or if you employ people who are more junior to the role or are looking at expanding your team, then this is a really great course for you guys to look at. The course will last for approximately 18 to 24 months, depending on how quickly the work gets assessed and how quickly the submissions come through. It's probably be closer to the 18-month, but we've allowed a little bit extra for the endpoint assessment. That the organisation that we have has said to we need to allow at least 3 months for that. So that's why there's the sort of the bracket rather than a set time frame. The course is going to be fully remote or distance learning. We decided that because the scale of the interest that we were getting before we went live was coming from all over the country, but there wasn't enough interest from a small localized area to do lots of face-to-face teaching. So we decided if we included the whole of England, then we can have decent sized cohorts and we can be a centralized provider for the content. The other issue with doing face-to-face learning that we found when we looked into it was going to be the logistics and the cost. Being an apprenticeship, the apprenticeships funding agency won't cover the cost of travel, accommodation, anything like that. So we decided that it wouldn't be feasible to have people travelling from Newcastle down to Winchester to come and do some training with us. So we decided to keep it remote. The content itself, so it's going to be a mixture of e-learning, there'll be some videos, and we've got lots of webinars and sort of online tutorials and workshops. We've got lots of guest speakers signed up who are going to come and help us out. So we've got some experts coming in to deliver some of the content as well. We've got here about the RSI tech. So we've worked quite closely alongside the Science Council and ASPE whilst creating this programme. And the Science Council have agreed that our standards, they're just finalising this now, so this isn't a definite 100% going to go ahead, but we're pretty confident that our standards for the apprenticeship will align to the standards for the Science Council, and it will allow apprentices once qualified to sign up and register as a registered science technician. It'd be a shorter application route than the usual the full length one that technicians currently have to go through. But I think that's a really great selling point, a really great point for the apprentices going through this, that this is a goal for them to get at the end, and there's a good chance that this will help them get their registration. It's not a given; they do still have to apply, but we're working quite closely with them to make it as smooth transition as possible. So there's 10 modules altogether within the 18 to 24 months. They cover the core standards as well as the speciality standards, and that also includes one module on preparing for their endpoint assessment. So nine separate topics and then an endpoint assessment. I've mentioned about the guest speakers and the external experts. Another one of our quite exciting selling points is the moulage and special effects makeup module. So one of the speciality standards says that we have to deliver this. We've joined forces with a special effects makeup provider called Saviour Medical, which some of you may well have heard of. He's based down in Dorset, but I think he's quite well known amongst the simulation world around the country. He provides some really great courses on moulage. So we've joined up with him, and he's going to help us. He's going to deliver that content for us. He's created some really great videos. We will be buying some kits of makeup, including the paints, brushes, glues, 3D wounds, everything you need to be able to practice this kit, and that will be provided to the apprentice as a part of the costs of the course. I think that's a really good. We've kind of stepped up on what the standards say for that, because we thought it'd be a really exciting point for the learners to have a go at. So these are the modules. These are all available on the IFATE website if you wanted to have a closer look at the standards to see if they're relevant for your areas. But as you can see there's some quite generic ones at the beginning, which the core standards which learners have to cover, such as preparing the environment, health and safety, inspections, maintenance, and then we come along to some of the more speciality ones, which link more closely to the simulation-based education. So we're developing education and simulation techniques and making potential design modifications. We're doing the scenario coding and programming, so running the mannequins, running the environment, running the equipment that they might have. There's the moulage module, and then the facilitation. We ask them to facilitate a study session or a training session based on what they do within their environments at their workplace. So there's the assessments throughout the apprenticeship. So there's the knowledge and the skills we will be assessing them on. So the knowledge is generally going to be written assignments, but we've also tried to break that up with some other project type work. So posters and leaflets to make it a little less boring having to write essays all the time, to be honest. There's an audit, so they'll be doing an audit within their workplace that can pretty much be on any topic they like, but we can give some guidance around that to make your lives as line managers or as facilitators easier. If there's something that you need doing, this is a great opportunity to get your learners to do it. We can also assess their knowledge on reflective practice, and we'll be doing professional discussions and one-to-ones and Q&As as well. The skills part, because we've gone national with the course, we're going to be using witness validation, so you won't have an assessor come out to your workplace. What will happen instead is the learner will be given an observation pack, of which there'll be 3 throughout the course. The observation pack will detail all of the standards which we would like them to meet within their workplace. The learner will get a witness, so it could be somebody they work with, it could be a line manager, a colleague, a member of faculty, anybody really. They will then watch them do the task, and they'll give us a detailed description of the events that's happened, how the learners achieved those tasks, and then we'll come back and we'll assess that witness validation with some Q&As and professional discussions to verify the work. The endpoint assessment. So the endpoint assessment is split up into 2 separate sections. So there'll be an observation in practice, in which an independent assessor from the National Open College Network, they will come out to the workplace with a set of criteria, and they'll observe the learner at work achieving those standards. And there will be a professional discussion, again with an independent assessor, which will be backed up with their portfolio of evidence, which will be the coursework, posters, audits, the things that they've done throughout the year, the 2 years, sorry. The independent assessor is responsible for the outcome of both exams. So you can be offered either a fail, a pass, or a distinction. You have to pass both parts, but there is a chance for resits, which will be discussed on a sort of case-by-case basis. Normally with an apprenticeship, if you sign up, the employer gets to choose their endpoint assessment organisation. Currently, there is only one for this course, so there is no choice at the moment. But however, if by the time you get to that point with your learners, then we'll let you know and give you the option. But the National Open College Network is currently our only endpoint assessor. Then finally, the entry criteria for learners. So for the apprentice themselves, the legal entry requirements is that they need to be 16 or over. They need to be a resident of England. The apprenticeship levy does not cover Scotland, Ireland. I don't think it covers Wales either. So they have to be an England resident and have the right to work in the UK. They don't need any prior experience. It would help, but it's not necessary. It's not mandatory. So if they're brand new into a role, or if you're recruiting in a specific apprenticeship role, then that's absolutely fine. The only qualification experience that they need to have before application is the level 2 in maths and English or equivalent. The equivalent qualifications is a GCSE. I can't remember the new numbers, but I think it's like that's a 9 to 7, between a 9 and 7, or a GCSE A to D. So it's a basic level maths and English, but they need to have that before they apply. That's the only entry criteria that we've stipulated for the course. They need to be contracted a minimum of 22.5 hours a week. Anything lower than that, it's not going to be enough to be able to meet the standards and to be able to get their off the job time, which is required. The requirements for an employer, they need to have the facilities available to be able to, for the learner to be able to practice on. We have said there's no minimum type of kit or minimum level of equipment or environment that they need, but there will be conversations with employers and learners on application just to make sure that there is enough for the learners to be able to achieve all of the standards. As I said a minute ago, this only covers England, so this the apprenticeship levy doesn't cover Scotland, Wales and Ireland. They have their own. They need to have somebody who can act as a witness or a mentor. So this doesn't have to be anybody who's qualified or super experienced in simulation education. It needs to be someone who works with them fairly regularly, enough to be able to observe them doing tasks, to sign off reflections, and just be there for pastoral support, obviously, because our assessors aren't going to be attending your locations. But it's that will also be discussed on a case-by-case basis, but it will be somebody like a line manager or a member of faculty who works alongside them. The employer needs to be aware of the 20% off the job requirement for apprenticeships. So across the duration of the whole apprenticeship, 20% of the learner's time needs to have been allocated as self-directed study or doing reflections, doing the e-learning, attending workshops at work. There's a whole variety of things, and there's a whole booklet on it, so I won't go through it all now, but they need to be aware of this requirement to have 20% off the job. And the cost to the employer is nothing. We've kept our budget within the, oh, excuse me, sorry, I think that was the last page anyway. We've kept our budget within the levy drawdown, which is a maximum of £10,000. So we've kept our budget within that. So to the end user, the cost of the course is going to be nothing. And I think that probably pretty much covers it. If you are interested in finding out more information, or if you have somebody who you would like to sign up, or if you want to sign up yourself, you can use the contact details on there, or I'll put my email address in the chat as well if there's any specific questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And your slides are definitely in keeping with everything else today. I think it's quite interesting that simulation continues to evolve, so that in the technician apprenticeship, moulage is a key point, which is about as far from pressing buttons and trying to get the laptop, trying to remember the laptop password as you could imagine. So thanks for that. I'm looking around to see if anybody has any questions. I'm not seeing any hands up at the moment. This is hot off the press, so 7th of February this was launched, yeah?
Yeah, 7th February. We've got some applications coming in already. So yeah, we're ready to go.
And one thing I would just like to remind the meeting about is that we are recruiting this full-time senior specialist sim technician, and it is an opportunity for simulation centres to think about, you know, a graded set of development of staff, that offering somebody a secondment with us might free up space for somebody else to step into their shoes whilst they're on secondment for 18 months, and then somebody else to step into theirs, and maybe that would include somebody on an apprenticeship, just for an example. Andrea, you have your hand up.
Yeah, we're just about to go out to advert for SimTech using the new apprenticeship standard. And I had a question. So is there a set sort of start point for the education aspects of it? Do they have to fit in with a certain sort of time?
As in like cohort enrollment, do you mean? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, not at the moment. We've decided we're going to do a sort of rolling recruitment. So because the only face-to-face bits will be the webinars, which will be later on in the course, we're going to just take apprentices as and when they're ready. So we're going to do a roll-on, roll-off type recruitment. So in theory, we'll keep recruiting throughout the year until we reach our capacity with our assessors. But at the moment, that's not happening just yet. So no, there's no deadlines for sign up.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you. There's Robert, another hand up there.
Yeah, it's really interesting presentation. Thanks, Aidan. We're actually looking to do an apprentice model for care workers, and I know you mentioned it earlier on, but I'd just like to get a bit more expansion on the fact that you're going to be doing no face-to-face component of this, and one would have thought that perhaps in particularly the topic that you've chosen, that you might need to have some of that face-to-face. We recognise it's really difficult because we're trying to do this across initially East Kent and further Kent and Medway, and it's really difficult to get the care workers to be able to come and to join us. So we do recognise that's a problem, but we're really trying to work at how we can give them some simulation experience in particular to back up their, which in our case will be like yours, would be a 2-year apprenticeship model.
Yeah, we really looked into this quite a lot, tried to work out, because our plan A was to do a study block or two throughout the year of a week or two at a time. But looking into it, and we did a bit of market research to some potential employers to see if they would fund it, because obviously the travel and accommodation wouldn't be included, so they would have to fund that themselves, and plus the week or two away from the workplace. And the majority of people we spoke to said they wouldn't fund it and they couldn't afford to send their apprentice away for extended periods of time. The next best thing, and it's not ideal, but the next best thing was to do webinars or live face-to-face group sessions online. So we've kind of tried to get as much of that in as we can. So they're not just sitting doing e-learning for 2 years, but they do actually get to meet some experts. They get to network with their cohorts or their peers. There'll be some sessions with the Science Council as well. They're going to come along and do some talk for us with them throughout the apprenticeship. So they should still get the exposure, although it will be through a screen. The practical aspect of the learning, I think you were mentioning a minute ago as well, is going to have to be their in-house learning. So obviously as an apprenticeship, there is an expectation that a lot of the work is done themselves within their workplace. So there's that point is we're going to get them, we'll give them the tools to go and do the learning at work, and then they'll have to go and find ways of learning in their workplace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, very interesting thought, Jag, about the validation of all this. Yeah, I think there is a lot of work to do, and a lot of work for us, potential for a lot of us work for us to do together going forward. And maybe we can start to think about how we could bring some of this stuff together and workshop it at the conference in May for as a recruitment. Okay. I don't see any more hands up, so I'm going to pass the baton back to Ali Bukhari to take us through and see for an update around the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. So actually, we are at the true networking part of our meeting. The hope is that you would have come with some updates from your organization, from your teams, and that you're able to share that. And the idea obviously is to share good practice, but also challenges, because we obviously have had a number of challenges, more so in the last couple of years than before. But what have you been able to do in the last 6 months that's worth reporting or report worthy from your point of view? What challenges have you faced? That we definitely want to know. And what ways have you found to overcome those challenges? That would be really golden nuggets for us to share. So basically the floor is yours. Raise your hands, and if I don't see your hand myself, then hopefully Andy will remind me. Andrea.
So I've been approached by our blood transfusion practitioner because there's been a new SHOT CAS alert around transfusions, and part of it is they need to do simulation. And at the moment we have a major hemorrhage sim with F1s or multi-professional sim, but they want to include the lab and the porters for the whole team. And I wanted to know, has anyone done anything like this and how to go about it?
Okay, responses?
Somewhat relevant is the deceased donation course we developed in Nottingham, when we were able to take advantage of the fact that it was a simulation to bring in everyone from lab to the coroner attended, and the coroner was absolutely astounded to be able to share the moment when the clinician in the intensive care unit phoned the coroner about a potential deceased donation, and to actually feel it in their shoes in that environment. So we have some generic experience, but I think what you're offering is the full potential of simulation to free people from all concerns around care and confidentiality and consent, to have a free engagement with the process. And that's how I would look at it. I don't know if that's helpful, Andrea.
I think I'm just thinking about the practicalities of how you would involve the lab. How would you do your specimens? Would you have to have someone based in the lab? Yeah. I don't know if anyone has one.
Absolutely. This is going to be obviously complex, but worthwhile doing from the looks of things. I know that we did a course on child death, or have done a few courses in child death, which scenario started off at home and went all the way to mortuary. That was involved stimulated patients, and paramedics, A&E staff, pediatric staff, anesthetic staff, retrieval service, or the failure of resuscitation and not lack of retrieval service, and then eventually all the way into mortuary. Lauren might remember more of it than I do, but certainly I think it was considered to be an excellent learning opportunity by all staff, and they did manage to engage, as you mentioned, people like pathology lab and porters. It does take a lot of organization, though.
Mm.
But as he's saying, that's simulation without walls. It's great.
And just very quickly to add, the NHSBT, or whatever its title is now, were really supportive, and including in being able to provide clinically unusable blood units So we had a cell salvage training program, and we were able to get hold of unusable blood units for that. So it's the sort of thing where you'd never think to ask the question, but if you do, you might be pleased by the answer.
Paul's made a comment. Paul, do you want to come in?
I wasn't going to come in and put it on text just because it's not really a very positive reply.
No, but that's okay. It's all good stuff, really. We're sharing challenges.
Yeah, no, every time the challenges of using other teams when we're trying to run simulation is so difficult that every time we've wanted to use lab or portals or anything like that, we've just end up using our own props and our own faculty to do it. We've never actually managed to, and to be fair, I don't think we've even tried particularly using lab and portals apart from when we do our giant Simley Park event that we do once a year for the new incoming F1s, at which point we take over an entire day surgical unit as a ward, and then we do everything for real, including I mean, mostly that's designed specifically to allow the incoming FY1s to understand the clinical software that we use, the systems that we use, and therefore everything they do is almost for real. At that point we have, but even that I don't think. Oh, do we use porters and labs for that? I guess we might do. I'm not sure. There's 50 faculty for that. It's hard to tell who's on it now.
I think the challenge is scaling it up so that if you do it once, 1 or 2 people in the lab get the experience of it. But how do you scale it so that you capture more of the staff?
But on your side, on the plus side, Andrea, you have been asked this. It's not you initiating it. It's the people from the blood transfusion service that's asking you. So they may already have contacts with the labs that they can use, or at least encourage them to engage with you more effectively. So, you're probably a little bit ahead of us having to cajole the lab staff or busy lab staff who, to give up some time and be involved with this. Andrea, now that you're on talking about it, anything more generally you want to tell us about the simulation at your organization, or?
Gosh, not that springs to mind. I mean, we've enjoyed doing the GP sim with Jane Room, and that's been going well. And we have been approached about starting pharmacy simulation. Again, it's something that we're just discussing at the moment. We haven't taken that further, but that's something new that we're looking into. And we have been asked about, could we set up something with the coroner's court type simulation? But that's at very early stages of just an idea.
Thank you, Andrea. You do have a hand up from Manisha, Ali.
Okay, sorry, Manisha, I didn't see you. Yep.
Thank you for opportunity to feedback. In response to Andrea's question, we have not used the lab, but previously during our massive hemorrhage scenarios, we picked up the very white background massive hemorrhage protocol on the wall, which nobody could read. And we worked with the lab to change the background, make it more colorful and eye-catching. Second one, we had 2 methods of activating massive hemorrhage protocol. One was 2222 and another one was a bleep number, which created confusion and which was picked up through the massive hemorrhage scenarios. And we worked again with the lab to change, and now we have a standard 2222. We also worked with lab to create very realistic blood labels, to create like laminated pictures of blood products, and one simulated patient and the details and everything. So this is our experience working, and we had a very positive experience, but we never had apart from just one, like Ali's scenario where we had a sequential simulation for a Nella patient, which lasted for 6 hours from ED arrival to the theater. That time we had radiology and lab and everything in a real sense, but that took like 3 months of preparation to create one simulation for 6 hours. But that was extremely helpful because that led to creation of radiology passport for urgent CT scan and things like that. it does give quite a lot of information. It is worthwhile, but it is very, very resource heavy.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Shane, you want to come in?
Yeah, I was going to come in to a slightly different point to Manisha, so I don't know if anyone got any questions for Manisha first.
Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to come in with a different point to you, so I didn't want to move us on without people having the opportunity to ask you any questions.
Yeah, I just needed to feedback too about the meal. The second part is that we are working on 360 films for the local needs, the things, the skills which we really needed to develop in our hospital. And I was wondering, is there any help, like a technical help regionally, where we could have a 1 day or 2 of a training session? Because right now we are struggling with some of the camera angles and things. We do have a really good project, actually 4 of them. Everything's written up and everything's ready, but our limiting factor is skilled help for filming.
Ian?
Hi Manisha, that sounds really useful work. So I'd be happy to, if you want to email me offline, I'd be happy to try and connect you to our local immersive learning technology officer and see what kind of support we can arrange.
Thank you, Ian. May I have your email address, please?
Yeah, I'll pop it in the chat if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Manisha, while you're talking now, that you're talking, before we come back to Shane, do you want to continue giving us your update for Medway?
Yes, the other really exciting thing we have done is now we are working in synergy with the governance team and patient safety team, and every learning point which we have from simulation and feedback from junior doctors or any other paramedical faculty, now it's directly linked with governance team. We have now a constant spot in the meeting as well, and they are now listening to us more of ergonomic solution to problems. So I think that's all I wanted to feedback.
That was always a dream, wasn't it? Well done, Manisha.
Yeah,
if you
managed
to convince the patient safety colleagues to come along from governance, that's great.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments for Manisha, or shall we move on to comment that Shane was about to make? Can't see anymore. Okay, Shane, over to you.
Thanks, Ali. Yeah, possibly not as exciting as some of the work that sort of Manisha's touched on. But for those of you who haven't met, I'm Shane. I work for HE within our pharmacy team. And Andrew, I think I was just picking up on your point around sort of linking pharmacy professionals into simulation. And so I'd really to put out a call to colleagues around, any work you're sort of doing around that. So we're starting to do some scope where I think we're early in our journey around simulation. I think pharmacy, both regionally and nationally. And we are doing some scoping at the moment just across the region, looking at kind of what sim activity pharmacy departments are doing across Kent, Surrey, Sussex, the southeast and into London, to get an idea of kind of where they're at themselves. And I think kind of what we're hearing back is we're seeing some pockets of good work happening, but very much kind of local to a pharmacy department. So it's kind of happening on its own, but not necessarily connected into other things that are happening in organizations. So, I mean, Andrew, I'd love to hear more about sort of the conversations you're having, and then just an ask of anyone else, if you are doing any work and you're sort of bringing pharmacy colleagues into some of that multi-professional simulation work that you're doing. Yeah, I'd love to kind of hear more, and I'll post my details in the chat, and I'd love to pick up offline. I know, Jane, you've got your hand up there, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, I have one clinical pharmacist as part of the faculty now, but obviously that's with the aim of, doing something that is, interprofessional. But also last year I was doing an awful lot of work with COVID vaccination hubs, and a lot of them obviously were very pharmacy run or kind of, completely pharmacy led. So had quite a lot of, input and engagement from mainly the community pharmacist. The clinical pharmacists that work within the PCNs, but also some of the community pharmacists as well that also run, say, the hub out at Tysus and things like that. So so happy to have a conversation if that's helpful. It's like community and primary care rather than hospital based, though.
That would be brilliant, because I think actually that's an area we're really interested in exploring. So Jane, I might pick up with you outside of this if that's all right.
Yeah, no, it'd be great.
Okay.
Andrea?
So yeah, the pharmacists approached me because they're saying that pharmacists are giving more medications now, and they wanted to look at the, you know, when you have an anaphylaxis or the kind of side effects that you can get from medications. But I think there is a lot of lack of understanding, because they've been given some money and they were wanted to buy a mannequin, and I was like, no, don't buy a mannequin, we've got mannequins. So it's getting that understanding of how SIM works and how we can help them make it happen.
Yeah,
It's a natural progression, isn't it? Everybody runs to the mannequins first. Okay, lovely. Robert?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of feedback as to what we're doing, but it builds on what Shane and everyone else has been just talking about. We're really interested in how we do more of the XR filming and also produce more bespoke experiences, so that we create those multi-professional scenarios that you're talking about, Shane. And how do you do that? And that's why we were so impressed when they did the mental health sim day here, how they were able to bring in all of those different organisations into the room, whether that's virtually or whether it's physically. So we're really interested in that. And the other bit I wanted to just emphasise is our business model at our Digital Innovation Centre revolves around a collaborative model, and in particular a collaborative faculty, so that we can actually bring in other people. So we're so excited to have Jane Roon come tomorrow. So she's our expert in primary care, but we can bring our expertise in our Digital Innovations Centre so that we have an expanded faculty. So I'm the senior lecturer in innovation in healthcare. In fact, I've just retired at the New Kent and Medway Medical School. So it's about how do we produce that all-encompassing experience so that people can become comfortable and confident in those scenarios that they meet, which me, as I was a GP, you know, I never had that luxury at all. The only luxury I had of scenarios was real case scenarios, and you had to often try and do it on your own. So I'm really excited about how we can do this in this multi-professional way, and particularly we're, as I said earlier, focusing on social care, but it's not just about social care, it's about how can we make our facilities collaborative so that people can share that, so that we can do that. And so, for example, we've got 8 Oculus headsets, but we're now in partnership with the Paula Carr Centre, who've bought 10 Oculus headsets. So now we've got we've got 18 Oculus headsets, which we could make available to other people when it's appropriate for them to want to use it. So other people could have 18. So Andrea could have 18 if she wanted, if she needed to have them. So that if we work in that collaborative way of collaborative facilities and collaborative faculty, and it's really exciting. I love this idea of this collaborative faculty, because otherwise we're going to be training people, hardly ever using them, and then whereas the expertise is out. I've always felt the strength of my team is that I recognise that the strength is outside of my team. You know, it hasn't just got to be within our team.
Very well said.
And I would, in the spirit of Simnet, I'm very open for people to approach me if we can do that. And I'm working a bit with Ian as well, who I see in the corner there of my screen at any rate. You know, how can we do this on behalf with everybody, not having to all do it on our own? That's, I guess, what I'm trying to do.
I think we're finding ways to re-articulate the mission of this group, really. And what I would just add is there have been a number of accepted definitions for what healthcare simulation is, and I think we're due a new one. And the new one is that it's any event, any care event in which the service user has been removed, really, because it's being used in such a wide range of ways, and not only for learning outcomes, that we need to recognize this. And going back to the start of the day and Jane's feedback evaluation and the I've always hated role play. You know, our audience is everybody who hates role play and everybody else. Sorry, that's me.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Andy. Anybody else who wants to go next and tell us about what you guys been up to? Alex, Paul, Lauren, who wants to go next?
Who wants to go next? Yeah, I mean, I can jump in if you want.
Please do.
So as I alluded to earlier on in my conversation, I've got about a week left at University Hospital Sussex on the east side as head of resus and simulation. There is as yet to be identified anybody to take my role. However, there is still simulation running with a simulation technician in that space at the moment. So as I understand it, they are looking at finding their feet a little bit more with simulation. Of course, with the trust having merged with Western Sussex, i.e. Brighton and Western Sussex, merging in April of 2021. Obviously, there's a big strategic picture that needs to be explored, and they've got the opportunity to do that at this present time and see where simulation services across the entire space moves forward. So all I would say is and ask from the network is if you are in a position to support the teams in any requests that come through, then I'm sure they would be most grateful. They've appointed a new integrated education director by the name of Martin Clark, who has a fantastic vision for simulation and education moving forward, certainly in the integrated space, which is amazing. So we look forward to seeing some excellent stuff coming out of there. But the simulation's very much moving on, and they've got some good stuff going on, but they may need support from the network in the future with other projects. From my point of view, I'm moving on to take over as the lead for simulation at King's College Hospital in South East London, and we're launching a new nursing and midwifery academy over the coming 12 months where I'll be leading that simulation piece in the new academy, which is quite exciting. And I've literally been on Teams calls with the architects and walking the empty shell of a building over the past couple of weeks. So it's been really, really exciting stuff, and we've got a long way to go, but all good stuff. And if this is my final moment on the KSS Simnet, I would just like to say thank you to everybody who has supported me and my weird, quirky requests over the past few years. And thank you for working with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, Alex. I think we all like to say a big thank you to Alex and his contribution to simulation faculty. I think he's been an amazing colleague over years and years, and good luck to you, and hopefully King's have a gain and it's our loss, obviously, in this regard. Fantastic.
Well, that's very kind, Ali. Thank you. And the one final thing from me is my email hasn't changed. My work phone number has, but my email hasn't, and I'm always in that collaboration space. So if there's anything I can continue to help and support people with, then please do reach out. I'm more than happy to help.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you. But in the short term, Alex, did I hear that there's a bit of a gap at Brighton?
As far as I understand it, yes. And that's mainly down to what the structure of the new education structure actually looks like. I kind of left at the very beginning of that thought process with the new chap, and so he's got a bit of work to do as to whether to split my role, which was resus and sim, have a lower banded sim person in place or not. We were making use of a band 4 bank person because we couldn't make them permanent at the time. So as I say, there is a sim tech down in Brighton who is in place for the moment. I think there are plans bubbling away in the background to obviously move Brighton's side more forward. You'll be aware that the Western side has a more in-place structure, and that's going to continue. But what that whole piece looks like, they've got the real opportunity to evaluate and restructure that whole sim piece if necessary. So it's an interesting time, I think. Yeah, but yeah, there's still stuff going on.
Thank you very much, Alex. Okay, any comments? I think Jane, you have your hand up.
So yeah, Alex, I don't know, is that Arthur Duffield down at the Royal Alex? Who's the one you're talking
Indeed it is, Jane. Yes.
I've got a session booked with him for our first primary care for Brighton on the 16th of March, but he did say that after that he is moving on, so he's actually not going to be there for very much longer.
Yeah, I have heard that on the grapevine. I handed everything back to Brighton about 3 weeks ago as I had some leave to take. I did hear that on the grapevine, but I do know that Martin is on the case and he's got plans bubbling in the background that have yet to be released as to making sure more permanent cover is in place.
That's good. I'm sure it's good to know from lots of respects, but certainly the day we released 30 places, so 15 at Brighton and 15 for Princess Royal for Sims, and they filled within a week actually, and then we've got quite a waiting list at both. So I think there's a real, it would be really good to kind of pursue that at Brighton if we can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alex. Anybody else wants to step forward and give us their update? Paul or Lauren or anybody else, actually. It doesn't have to be.
I can update from Down Valley.
Go on then, Lauren.
So I don't know if people on in the meeting might know that Phil left us, and so did our tech Lucy in October. So we've now got a new tech called Kaylee and a new sim and human factors training officer who is Jen, who's come over from Chelsea and Westminster. So it's largely just been settling them in for the last few months, getting our things up and running. We've got quite a few new half-day courses running across specialities, which is really exciting. We're doing a lot more than we were before, which is really good. And we're trying to merge our we're trying to merge our nursing and medical faculties together into interdisciplinary sim. So for foundations and preceptorship nurses together, and medical students and nursing students together, which could hopefully be really exciting. Once I think it's going to take probably about a year to get it fully up and running, but that's kind of our news from Down Valley.
Fantastic. I mean, I have to say, being a colleague of Lauren, I thought we thought we would go through some really rocky time, but the team that was there really kept it together, and luckily we're in a position to be able to move on now. And obviously, Phil moved on to University of Greenwich. To be very happy there. But the good news is that the traffic isn't one way. We are not just losing people to London, just like Alex said. We're also getting some people back from London, as Jen came from Chelsea and Westminster. So that's good news. Any comments or questions? If not, then shall we ask one of the other colleagues who want to share their update? Looks like you all want an early afternoon, don't you? Okay, all right. Well, you don't have to necessarily. If you've got nothing else that you share, that's great. I'm going to hand back to Andy. But before I do that, to close the meeting, can I just remind everybody about our inaugurative, whatever the word is, a conference that's coming up in May. So please consider joining us. Ask colleagues to come along and present and tell us what they've been doing, what excellent work they've been doing. There are e-posters available and there are oral presentation slots available. Is that correct, Andy? You can take over.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. Well, hopefully I'm sharing my screen, which shows the timetable. I'm really pleased. We've got Professor Bryn Baxendale, who Ian and Rosie will know of, if not more of you, so I'm sure more of you. Deborah Nestel is joining us virtually from Monash, Australia, and Fran Ives, who is very quiet about it, but was the human factors lead in Birmingham for the major NHS trust for well over a decade, I think nearly 15 years, and did, you know, before bringing in human factors professionals into healthcare was even considered, she was doing the job in Birmingham. So that's our human factors aspect, really led by Fran. And then we've got Bryn and Deborah. So even if you turned up and didn't do anything else but attended the keynotes, it's worth the cost of the day, and it's worth a day just for that. But we do have the opportunity for, we've got 10 opportunities to give a short presentation on your work. We've got 10 opportunities to run a workshop, and we've got industry exhibitors. So we've filled our exhibition hall now, and I'm looking, we might even have to open an annex. But yes, excuse me, this is shaping up to be a really good day, and a good day to be involved in. Tickets are on sale now via the university ticketing online process. CPD points are applied for. The conference brochure will be coming out soon for you all, and that's a great day coming up. And I think so. I don't know if Prof. Dander's still on in the meetings, probably not, but his idea of a KSS centre for the scientific validation of immersive and higher simulation, I think is a really interesting thought, and something that it would be great to run a 30-minute workshop on at that conference, if he hasn't already done it by then. And there's the job. So we're looking for a senior specialist simulation technician, running till August 23. And this is a great development opportunity. Work with subject matter experts with some advanced kit, and maybe get the chance to take the more portable bits of kit out and about, for delivering work primarily aimed initially at the specialty training gap, but also just in a little bit more distributive, like Robert Stewart was saying, a little bit more distributive use of kit. So, you know, I would love to provide Jane Room with more than a doll every now and then. See what she does with some of that, and some moulage as well. So that's all from me, Ali.
Thank you, everybody, for your time and enthusiasm. It was lovely to have you around. Obviously, we'll have these things ongoing, and we look forward to seeing many of you at our inauguration conference in May. Before I close, Rosie, do you have any final words you want to say?
Hi, I don't really, because I'm just back from a week's annual leave, but I hope at some point to be able to update on any of the funding that's been agreed from the HEE underspends. I think this year, you know, it was the shift changed to be focused very much on HEIs, but I need to sort of, you know, gather that formally, and then I'll be able to report back. But those who have received funding, would be fantastic if they could contribute to Andy's conference that he just set out.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Maybe next time, Rosie, you can.
Yeah, happy to. A
detailed feedback. Lovely, everybody. Have a good evening and afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye.